Hello Kindred and welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the very first time. Today we're going to be focusing more on witchy and pagany things because there has been people asking, and also we are in December, so we're approaching, within a few days actually, one of my favorite witchy holidays, the Winter Solstice. My name is Kiri Callaghan and today we're talking about Yule. So at Samhain, we honor and celebrate and welcome the descent into and the return of the dark, the beginning of the new year, acknowledging that all things beginning emerge from darkness. At the Winter Solstice, we reach the depth of that darkness with the longest night of the year. Darkness has reached its peak. The Winter Solstice, also known as midwinter, is when one of the Earth's poles is tilted the furthest from the sun. This happens twice a year, once for each hemisphere. What's really cool is not only does the solstice occur on a specific day, it also occurs at a specific time. So for us in the northern hemisphere, it's going to occur on the 21st and 22nd. It's directly corresponding to the instant the North Pole is aimed the furthest away from the sun at 23.5 on the Earth's axis, which I believe is also when the sun is shining directly over the Tropic of Capricorn. This exact instant, this darkest moment, will occur for us in the Northern Hemisphere at 4:19 a.m. UTC. That's 4:19 a.m. December 22nd. So for us in California, that is 8:19 p.m. on the 21st. The darkest moment when that is shifted. Like that, it's shifted the furthest away. Regardless what time zone you live in, the solstice happens at the exact same moment for everyone. So as we're experiencing one solstice, the southern hemisphere is experiencing another. It's just pointed the most towards the sun as opposed to the most away. Now, obviously, just because the North Pole is pointed the furthest away does not mean it will be the darkest moment for where you currently are. I'm in Southern California. It will still be lighter here than, say, where I used to live in Seattle, Washington, at the time the solstice hits. But that's also because I'm closer to the southern hemisphere. It'll still be dark, like pitch dark, but you get the idea. And this is why winter solstice is known as the shortest day and longest night of the year. Quite literally. For comparison, New York City will have essentially 9 hours of sunlight, as opposed to the 15 hours it has during the summer solstice. In Finland, they'll get about 5 hours, almost 6 of sunlight, whereas places in Alaska won't have any sunrise at all, and actually haven't since about mid-November. They won't have a sunrise till about January 22nd. The North Pole itself hasn't had a sunrise since October. But by contrast, the South Pole is currently basking in the midnight sun that won't set until March. So, bearing all of that in mind, what is the celebration of Yuletide and Winter Solstice? During this time, we start to wonder even now, how long are the nights going to be this dark? When will the sun return? We're not even dependent on natural light to go about our business, and we still get this feeling of, is the dark ever going to end? Are our days just going to get shorter and shorter until the sun just doesn't rise at all? But at Yule, a wonderful thing happens. The sun stops its decline, and for a few days, it rises in the same place. The sun seemingly stands still, and everyone waits for the turning. In our heads, we know the light will return. But can our hearts believe what our heads know? Yule is the time of reaching that final exhale. Actually, that's a really good way to look at it. If you're ever having a panic attack or you deal with anxiety like I do, there is an exercise where you are told to count in for a certain number. Usually it's 5, unless you have singer's lungs and like I do, and then you might do more than that, but you count in for a count of 5, and then you exhale for a count of 6, and you just hold it for a second, and then you begin again. And Yule is essentially that second after the exhale, after the last amount of breath has left the world. and everyone is waiting to inhale again. Because after that turn, the sun does start to move north again. And bit by bit, the light comes back again. So Yule and Winter Solstice are a celebration of that death and rebirth, that pause between, and how all things must go through this cycle, both metaphorically and literally. Now, some cultures celebrate just the winter solstice, and I believe it's Germanic tradition that began what is known as Yuletide, which would last over the course of 12 days. I know later on Christianity was like, oh, the 12 days of Christmas because the 12 apostles, but that's not, 12 appears a lot in multiple religions and multiple cultures. It's one of those numbers, probably because it is a multiple of 3, honestly, and 3, as we know, is the magic number. Evergreen plants represented everlasting life, that rebirth, that the light would return, that the world goes on, that life goes on, that there is no death without rebirth. So one of the traditions of the holiday is to hang evergreens on mantles, above doorways, about the houses and windows, boughs and garlands decorating a home. And while it was Germanic tradition that started bringing the entire tree inside the house, Christmas trees, or however you want your holiday tree, if you're bringing a pine tree in, that is also an evergreen. And while I believe Germans might have been the first to bring it inside, I think it was still traditional to decorate evergreens outside of your home as well, like adorn them with gifts and adornments. Redundant. Though it was Queen Victoria who popularized the idea of a Christmas tree with presents around it. So, thanks, Queen. Other evergreens that are very popular around this holiday include mistletoe, which was greatly revered by the Druids, was a healer and a protector. It was carefully cut to ensure it never touched the earth. It had magical properties that were believed to be connected to the fact that it lives between the worlds, between sky and heaven and the earth. It was used to increase fertility in both people and animals, and it was used to attract good luck and defend against evil spirits. And as for kissing under it, that probably has something to do with Roman Saturnalia and is linked to its believed fertility properties. So you probably have the Romans to thank for that tradition. Holly is another evergreen that I'm sure you're not surprised is on this list. Its spiky bristles were believed to repel unwanted spirits and symbolizes everlasting life, goodwill, and potent life energy. Newborn babies used to be sprinkled in holly water, which was just water in which holly had been soaked in, preferably under a full moon overnight. Another sacred evergreen was ivy, symbolizing immortality and resurrection. It grows in a spiral, reminding us of reincarnation and rebirth. Another sacred evergreen is yew. No, not you. You. No, not you. You! It sends up new trees from its roots and grows to a very great age. It's deeply connected with the spirit realm and ancestors. The yew is most commonly used as the central world tree and is often planted in graveyards. It is, however, very poisonous, so be careful if you are using any of it in any ritual. It is literally a tree that brings great life, but also can bring great death. It's very appropriate. And last but certainly not least, pine is also a sacred evergreen. Its branches brought healing and joy to your home, and they could be burned to purify it. I believe this is also why some people's Yule logs are made of pine. I've been celebrating Yule pretty consistently, but this is the first year that Angelique and I will be able to celebrate Yuletide, which is a 12-day holiday starting on Yule solstice and continuing through to the new year. Essentially, during that 12-day holiday, we decorate, we give gifts, we celebrate the coming of the new year and the light returning. We cook, we feast, we bake, we do charity, we light candles or little twinkly lights to celebrate the light returning. We burn pine branches or Yule log to purify the space for new things coming in. It's a general celebration of that the wheel of the year will keep turning, and while we meditate and celebrate this time of rest, this pause before the next inhale, we acknowledge and savor that life will return again. That's the general theme of the holiday, and you can celebrate it how you see fit. Once again, as I've said before, not everyone practices the same. You do not have to celebrate in the way that I celebrate. and vice versa. It's a time for kindness and charity when the world itself seems at a loss and full of darkness. We have to be the light in the world until the light itself returns. Hopefully you're still practicing kindness and charity throughout all of the year, but if you'd like to dedicate some of those acts of charity to the solstice itself, it's a great time to do it, because the world is colder, quite literally. It's darker. People need that light of your heart more than ever during this time of year. I typically do a ceremony on the first day of Yuletide, Winter Solstice itself, if I can. I mull cider or wine, have a small offering of cheese, meat, and some fruits of the season or preserved fruits. And it's essentially a time where I express that gratitude and I meditate on how those themes reflect in my current life and situation. I may ask for guidance or just be thankful and really think on those seeds I want to plant, that I want to see start growing as the light begins. What do I want to have pop out of the snow, essentially, in my life? What do I want to start seeing to grow? I personally don't tend to invite specific deities to my Yule celebration. I figure they're all off doing their own thing. They have things they need to do. I just sort of invite any benevolent spirits who would like to join. One thing that is very important, I think for a lot of rituals, but specifically I do make sure I do for Yule specifically, is no matter what my group is feasting on, we make a plate for spirits or fae or whatever decides to partake of it. That is an offering that is put out for them. It includes a little of something of our entire spread, including the cider or wine. It is a thankfulness. There is always, within the ritual itself, a lot of gratitude of what we have and asking what we can do to give back and show our appreciation to the world, how we can best rise in our own rebirth in the new year, how we can be the best versions of ourselves. If I'm celebrating solstice with other people, I do like to bring small little gifts to also exchange within the circle, but they always relate somehow to either our work, like witchy tools or crystal or something that is meaningful on a very spiritual level, or a talisman that I've blessed. It's always something that has more of a emotional, sentimental, and spiritual value rather than, like for instance, if you got your partner the latest Xbox game, you would not exchange that typically during this moment. At least not in my circle. That's specifically for typical present opening. I tend to leave the beginning of solstice is about like, here, we're going to set this, and this is going to be essentially, this is going to help you plant those seeds that are going to rise out of the snow come spring and help you in the new year. I have sort of rambled a bit during this video, mostly because I'm still trying to get comfortable talking about something that's this deeply personal to me that I don't often share with a lot of people in my life, let alone talking about publicly. Not because I'm uncomfortable with it, it's just not a lot of people who aren't practitioners ask. So being able to share it with people who are just curious or people just starting out is a new skill for me, but also a great joy. And I'm really hoping that in this coming year, one of the ways I can grow is to share with you, if you're curious, everything I can about what I've learned the many years during my practice, hopefully coherently. This ceremony really kicks off the feeling for the next 12 days, and it really is kind of awesome to sort of have that intention really carry you into the calendar new year as well, because starting on the 21st, ending on the 1st, it's kind of whoosh, the festivities go on and gone, and it's really great. Thank you so much for watching and bearing with me. If you have questions and I didn't cover something, leave them below and I will attempt to answer the best of my ability, and I'm sure other amazing witchy folk in this community will also attempt to answer. In the new year, I'm hoping to not only do more of these, but also for those of you starting out, if you want sort of a template of how to build your own rituals, that sort of thing. I want to give you the tools, and I'm really excited to delve more into this with you. I realize this was a very quick and somewhat scattered overview, but please share it with anyone else who you think could benefit from it. And thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Until then, keep on the windy side of care, and most importantly, stay curious. Bye.